Good afternoon. I'm Fu Qiao from China Mobile. I listened to all the sessions this morning, and I'm kind of thinking that probably what I'm talking about in this session a little bit different from what you are talking about in the morning. First, give a quite brief introduction for myself. I work for China Mobile, and I begin with the work most focusing on the network function virtualization. That is a hot word, I guess, a few years for now, but now it's not that hot. I begin with working on a lot of standardized organizations like IETF, SC to work out all the international standards. And then it comes to that China Mobile really want to do the transformation. So I shift my work to these working teams to working more on the specifications, how we actually want to deploy this cloud. But last year, or probably in 2017, when we actually want to deploy some of the cloud, we actually realized that this problem cannot just be solved by the traditional specification style. We worked out a lot of specifications, but they actually didn't solve all the problems we have. So I began to persuade my manager, probably we need some team to actually do the integration. So we established a new team like early this year. We called it as a Continuous Delivery Center for Future Cloud in China Mobile. In this team, we're focusing more on actually how we want to deploy the whole future network, how we want to do the integration, and how we want to do this integration in a continuous way. So that's why I would like to share some of our strategies, steps, how we're thinking about CI/CD. The reason why I say that my topic probably is a little bit different from what I heard this morning is our problem is somehow a little bit different. So I would spend some time explain about how this problem China Mobile is actually facing. So this is a picture that we often use to explain how China Mobile's network transformation actually will happen. We will have what we will have a new orchestrator, which probably some of you may know of ONAP, the open source orchestrator that is established by both China Mobile and AT&T, and now have a lot of operators follow. This is what we call as a new orchestrator. And then we will have all our network functions, which are traditionally located in some whole sets of hardware, and we will move it to the virtualized cloud. And we call it as a new data center that will have network functions in that. And then we would like to use SDN to control the whole network, to provide some agility to this whole network. So this actually, to some of you, you may think that this is nothing new, but to the service providers, to operators like China Mobile, this is actually changed the whole work styles for us. So by doing this, we kind of figure out that traditionally, when we talk about a single network functions, it means it is just from one vendor, like Huawei, like ZTE or Ericsson or something. So service providers only need to talk with this single vendor when we do the deployment, do the so-called integration, and when we do all the whole afterwards maintenance work. But now when you move it to a virtualized cloud, now we have 10 more vendors we need to work. And this is actually a nightmare for us. Take an example. Now we have the first, what we call the virtualized cloud deployed for network in China Mobile. It began this year, and we have 10 more vendors we should work with. We should explain with them all the whole detailed specifications, and they have different tables, Excel sheets to ask us to fill it, all doing in the traditional way, and it wastes a lot of time in doing these whole things. So when we talk about integration, we actually mean that, like what I said, traditionally it's like the left-hand side, that the IMS, EPC, these are all network functions. They are working on all-in-one hardware devices, and we don't need to actually thinking too much about the whole functions, the hard software working in that box. But now it changed into like some softwares that deployed on some commandery hardwares. That means that we should first talk with the hardware vendor about the detailed specification about the hardware, and then we introduce a new switch vendors and do their whole network connections. And then we have the software vendors to deploy the whole software. It makes things actually much more complicated for us. Another thing is about the network connection. The traditional hardware devices for network, they have network connections between their board cards, which is actually nothing to do with us actually. China Mobile don't need to worry about that. But now the network connections between these servers and switches, these are things that we need to figure out to make sure that every connection is correct so that the whole network could bring up. And another thing is about traditionally we cannot see the software. They are in the box. But now we need to see the manual, the VNAV, the virtualized interfaces. These are all things that we need to see. And we need to make sure that everything can work together in a smooth way. So since we kind of doing this kind of network transformation to make the whole network even more complicated, probably we need to do something to solve these problems. And also we kind of realize that when you bring so many vendors into this network, actually there's no single vendor that could help us to provide the availability and stability for this whole network. So it becomes the responsibility for the operators. So this is how we're thinking about how we should actually solve all these problems I just described. First, we kind of realize that this is a whole new technology for us and a whole new architecture. And probably the whole integration process is somehow we need to redefine. And another thing is that it's really, to us, it's a large scale of network and interface. We have like more than 100 interfaces we need to work out, and they are from different vendors. And there is no specification that is strict enough to make sure that every vendor know what we are talking about. And another problem is actually traditionally all different vendors in the CT industry, they are not good at do the integration because traditionally they have like competing devices. They are not quite good at do the integration between their devices with the other vendors' devices. So now you kind of want to have hardware from one vendor and then you will have software from another vendor. They actually have no good experience to do the integration. These are all problems we need to solve. So this is somehow our continuous delivery center is now trying to work out. We hope that probably we could have two hands. For the one hand, we could hold to all the different vendors that provides us with both the hardware and the software, making sure that they could verify it in a continuous way. And the right hand, we hope that we could have a hand to hold with all the distributed cloud that actually happen in our network. We actually have like 8 core cloud deployed this year across China, and then we expected that probably 300 to 600 edge cloud deployed across China. So this is a huge workload for us. Probably we should do that in a continuous way. So for that target, probably something we need to do. First is about a standard CI/CD pipeline. We really hope that all these whole things we are talking about, they could work in a pipeline manner, which means that as long as there is a new update actually happening in one of the vendor, and it will trigger some kind of pipeline process within China Mobile to do the whole integration with all the other vendors. And this also requires that secondly, we should have the tool automation, which means that all these things, they cannot be done in a manual way, actually. You need to have enough tools to make sure that they work in an automatic way. And the third thing we are thinking about is the standard database. For now, like for our vendors, each one of them, like I said, they are working in their different Excel sheets. They are they're talking their own words. This makes things really complex to us. So it seems quite a simple problem, but it's actually one of the biggest nightmare for us to work with all these Excel sheets. So then we try to seek some ideas how to solve all these problems. I myself am working in OpenNFV community. I'm also working in the OpenStack community. So I learned a lot of experience about the open source way. So we're hoping that probably open source could provide us with some ideas, provide us with some measures to actually solve all these problems. So I really dig into all these tools. We see a lot of useful tools, brilliant ideas actually happen in open source, especially the recent years when we're talking more and more about CI/CD. However, actually no single open source community actually cover all these problems and provide us with an overall solution that we could learn. And I see we also talk with AT&T and all the other service providers. We see that we're choosing our own tool chain and work out our own solution. Like China Mobile is working what we call as our auto tools. We also know that AT&T is working on Airship, a lot about solving the same problems. But this eventually will also make problems to vendors because vendors should fit into the different kinds of CI/CD pipelines provided by the service providers. This could also be a problem. So I also try to see share some of the details that I see in the open source, like OpenNFV, one of the other projects under the Linux Foundation. I'm working in this community ever since it's established. And we see a lot of actually fantastic tools actually happen in this community. They help us do a lot of automation. China Mobile built our own automation tools gradually, and basically it's based on the OpenNFV work. And we have a strategy change early this year, saying that we will focusing more on the what we call as network DevOps work. But actually now we are still trying to figure out a way. There's no actually clear roadmap for now. And I don't know if anyone know about XCI in this room, but it is somehow it is a project actually born in OpenNFV. But then we figure out that this work probably should stretch out from OpenNFV to all the other different projects. It's talking about a general event triggering CI, which makes different open source communities can work together. Like what we are doing in OpenNFV, we are kind of integrate OpenStack, ONAP, ODL, all these different open source things into one releases provided by OpenNFV. And all these different things, they need to use XCI to put them together. And we are actually now looking a lot more into XCI, thinking that probably could solve the problem for our service providers. And another mention is about the ZSM in SC. It's a new forum focusing more on the network automation and operation. But now we see that focusing more on when the network has established rather than on when the network should be deployed. And we also have a CNTT. I don't know if this is also someone in this room know about this work. This is ongoing work between OpenNFV and GSMA. We would like to begin this group within a group of operators, AT&T, Orange, China Mobile, to work on a common NFV platform definition and do the automatic certification. So these are all the ongoing work that we see. But like I said, there's no single community that actually provide us with a quite overall solution for that. So getting back to China Mobile, we began to do what we call as open auto, hoping that probably could solve some part of the problem. So we announced this work like late last year. it's not an open source project. It's just somehow a kind of partnership that we announce with different vendors, hoping that at least we could begin some of the talk, like what I said about the common CI/CD, about the database. Probably we could break the kind of the block between the different integrators and vendors. So we begin this work, and then also we begin to develop our own automatic platform like in 2017. And we're focusing more on not just redo the things that the integrators and the vendors already do. We kind of figure out the gaps within China Mobile, hope that we could also help solve some of the problem. Like first is about when we do the cross-vendor integration, they are actually somehow vendors, they have their own automatic tools to deal with their own hardwares. But when we have scenarios when software vendors want to have their software work on a different vendor's hardware, it becomes a huge problem to do all the different configuration things. So for this part, we try to provide some help. Like recently happened in the Nanjing province, we built the China Mobile Network Cloud. And we have like software from vendor A and want to deploy hardware on vendor B's hardware, and they have to configure their BIOS. And that is somehow, if they do not have the automatic tool, they need to switch on all different hardware and do the BIOS manually, and then switch off. And now so we figure out that that could be a problem that wastes a lot of our time. So we develop tools to do the automatic configuration for that. Another thing is about the customized requirement. This is easy to understand because integration is somehow quite specific for each different operators. So somehow you need to do some customized things by yourself rather than ask all the different vendors to do that for you. The third one is about manual testing. Traditionally, when we do the NFVI testing, it always wastes us like 2 or 3 weeks. It takes a lot of time to see whether there's any problems with the virtualized infrastructure that we are actually doing. So we do some automatic testing to reduce that time into like hours. And also we are thinking about probably these things could be connected with a CI/CD pipeline. And also probably different vendors, they could also provide their own automatic tools. These can also provide us with opportunities to build that pipeline and make this whole progress automatic and faster. So some screenshots for our system. Yeah, so we actually have some progress in this year for this whole auto platform. Like last week, we finished the verification and built up the first network cloud in Nanjing. We used like 1 hour to finish the verification for like about 800 and more servers in 1 hour and figure out actually a lot of problems. So you can understand how integration is actually happening in service providers in China. It takes a lot of time to realize that we are so not good at that. So that's all about that. Probably hope this will make sense of you. Why we like to learn more about CDF and hope we could get from this one. Okay, thank you.